And 6 hours later, what do you know? They fired that prosecutor and they put in someone who was solid. That's what Joe Biden said. That's what Joe Biden said about getting rid of a prosecutor who was looking into the company that was paying his son $80,000 a month for doing nothing. Kickbacks. In Ukraine. Burisma? Was that it? And now we got this prosecutor who last year said that key witness in this current fucking case that he's brought against Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, he said of that key witness that he was unreliable. Why? Because he was an habitual liar, embezzler, swindler. He had lied to fucking investigators. Not about Trump's situation, about his own. And what is he now? What was he then? A jailhouse snitch. Alvin Bragg is going to war against a billionaire, a beloved billionaire by many, and setting a precedent about prosecuting prior presidents. And at the core of his case is someone that he didn't want to put on the stand a year ago because he knew what a scumbag and jailhouse snitch he was. And that is the core of his case. He has been convinced to commit career suicide. On behalf of the establishment that are trying their level best to poke the deplorables with a stick until they do something, anything. And that's what this case is. And that's what this case is. Make no bones about it. Make no mistake about it. That is what this case is. That's the best he's got. A fucking weasel jailhouse snitch. Good morning, folks. Today is the very first day of April 2023. This is not an April Fool's joke. Nope. Donald Trump has decided, with sound legal advice, to turn himself in on Tuesday. He's going to enjoy his weekend, have some beautiful cake, turn himself in on Tuesday, be out the door Tuesday. No doubt. And that's what I recommended yesterday. And I'm sure it's what his fucking legal team recommended. He'll be out the fucking door immediately. They're not going to be able to keep him in. And this example of fucking third world fucking election rigging, they're not even going to release the actual charges until they have to present them to Trump and his people when he turns himself in. Because the charges are bogus. I mentioned Michael Cohen because he is not only a witness, he is the witness. When they decided to reconvene, I'll show all this to you in a second. When they decided to reconvene, when Alvin Bragg decided to dust this fucking chestnut off and try it, they took Michael Cohen, into an office and sat down with him at least 8 times, where he laid out the whole fucking story. And as he was laying out the story, the people he was mentioning were mentioning they were grabbing him, bringing him into fucking New York, and putting him before the grand jury. That's why it took so long. The whole thing is fabricated out of the mind of Michael Cohen, who, by the way, was deeply hurt by the Trump people, that he was left out in the cold. And then, when he was facing fucking time for his own misdoings, his own fraud, his own lies, his own tax evasion, his own scumbagginess, when he was facing charges for that, back in 2018, 2019, he decided to fucking turn Jailhouse Snitch. That's the case against the former President of the United States of America. Again, not a fan of any of these pieces of shit. From Biden to fucking Trump to fucking Bush to any of them. Clinton to any of them. Not a fan. But this is remarkable. And I will touch briefly on this. Again, I'm going to mention the Tucker Carlson show only because it's just so goddamn outrageous. He brought in fucking weepy Glenn Beck. This is how you cry on stage, and you put some little Bengay here under your eyes, and you go, do your Kyle Rittenhouse. I mentioned Kyle Kalinske. It's the wrong guy. It's Kyle Rittenhouse yesterday. I was talking about bad acting. It's Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah. It's also Glenn Beck, by the way. You can find all kinds of video of him weeping for America. They had that jackass piece of shit on Tucker Carlson last night. And you know what he was saying? He was saying everything I said yesterday morning's video. Almost as if somebody on his fucking writing staff watches my fucking work. Who knows? But I mean everything I said. He did then embellish it with a bunch of Jesus stuff because that's what he is. That's how he makes his money now. He's a televangelist. He's a political televangelist. And he's just a fucking weasel. He's just a weasel. Who can't spell oligarch, by the way. Fucking weasel. Anyway, I had him on last night talking about, he did say there was going to be a war with China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela in 2025, which we won't be, which is stupid. But of course he does that to help boost the fucking sales. Let me just, while I'm doing this, let me just toss this out there for you. He's a scumbag. Glenn Beck is a piece of shit. And these are some of the things that he said over the years. When I see a 9/11 victim family on television or whatever, I'm just like, oh, shut up. I'm sick of them because they're always complaining. He said that 4 years, just under 4 years after 9/11. He's sick of the fucking families, the victims' families of 9/11. Talks about the Katrina victims, says the only victims we're seeing on television are the scumbags, talking about the people living in the 9th Ward because they're poor. They're scumbags. He said, I think there are a handful of people who hate America. Unfortunately for them, a lot of them are losing their homes in the forest fire today, talking about when the forest fires in California back in 2007 burned a bunch of people's homes. Happy because they're evil leftists. No, just because he assumes that because they live in California. You ever heard of Arnold Schwarzenegger? Is he a leftist? He had a home in California. Just a fucking piece of scumbag shit, Glenn Beck. And then, of course, he said this. I've been nervous about having this interview with you because I feel like saying is, sir, prove to me that you're not working with our enemies. And I know you're not, and I'm not accusing you of being an enemy, but that's the way I feel. And I think a lot of Americans feel that way. He was interviewing Keith Ellison in 2006. And he said that because Keith Ellison happens to be a Muslim. He is a straight up fucking racist scumbag piece of shit. With a what would Jesus do bracelet on his wrist. When fascism comes to America, boys and girls, it'll be wrapped in a flag and carrying a Bible. That's Glenn Beck. And he was on Tucker Carlson's show last night. Tucker Carlson is a fucking idiot. Anyway, there's that.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well,
They put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Allegations and have no factual.
Mr. Sauer.
I'll post a link to all this stuff down below. This is the kind of person he's talking about. This is the kind of person this is the mentality. For some reason, this guy has been convinced to go to war with a 50%, maybe, still love fucking Trump. 48%, 47%, 46%, in that area. That's a number in a nation of fucking 340 million people or so. That's a fucking number. He's going to go to war against a billionaire with backing like that in a historic and precedent-setting case that, with the core of the case, is based on a guy who he said himself was unreliable and didn't want to fucking pursue a case a year ago. I guess somebody in the Biden administration said, okay, you got 6 hours. You're going to either file something or, you're going to be out. And we'll put in someone solid. And so, like Yatsenyuk and Porky Poroshenko, they caved. He caved. And he caved in such a way that this will destroy his career. This will destroy his career. And there's no question about that. This is fascinating. Watch this. Here is MSNBC. And they, yesterday, interviewed Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen is standing tall for the man. He's standing up for democracy and accountability. Have a listen to this shit.
But there are two things that I want to say. One is that accountability matters, something, Nicole, you and I have talked about on virtually every appearance that I've been on your show, and that I stand by my testimony and the evidence that I provided to the district attorney of New York. So
he stands by his testimony. He stands by his evidence. Accountability matters. No one, according to this, no one is above the law, says Michael Cohen, a guy who, by the way, I'll show you in a second, has a long history of thinking he's above the fucking law. And then the only way he could get out from under the accountability that he had to face was to turn jailhouse snitch on somebody he happened to have been close to for a while. And that is literally what is happening. No one's above accountability, huh? And that is a big thing. Oh, we're going to hold presidents accountable. How about the people who did that? How about the people who did that? How about the vice president who, while doing that to people who did nothing to us ever, said, well, we're going to have to walk on the dark side for a little while. This project for the new American century we're working on is going to force us to walk on the dark side for a little while. By the way, that's a guy who was drunk on a hunting trip, shot his friend in the face with birdshot because he was drunk, and the Secret Service kept him away from the fucking investigators for 3 fucking days until he sobered up. And the alcohol and whatever else was in his system was out. Accountability matters. No one is above the law. That is the most ridiculous fucking statement I have ever fucking heard. In the same fucking thing that Tucker Carlson did with Glenn Beck last night. With that piece of shit Glenn Beck last night. I mean, he's a piece of shit. Tucker Carlson had the goddamn gall to say for the last 150 years, the justice system in this country worked but now because of Trump, because of this nothing burger fucking case that will be destroyed on the basis of the key fucking witness, which is a jailhouse snitch and a liar, habitual liar. Tucker Carlson comes out and goes, because of this is the first time our justice system has been perverted. I've had cops lie on the stand about me during cases. I was in the back of a cop car once. And I had a police officer. I said, we're going to go to trial on this because this is bullshit. He goes, you're poor. You're going to get he said this in the fucking, and I told my lawyer this, and we got the fucking recording, and they cut it off right before he said this stuff. They erased it right before he said this stuff. Supposed to show me in the car all the way to the police station, and it showed me in the car right up until the point where he turned the car on and we started driving to the police station, and it turned off after that. Manipulating evidence, lying. He told me, you're poor, you're going to get a fucking public defender, you're going to plead it out, and there's nothing you can do because I'm poor. And that's what the fucking cop told me. This is a long time ago. But I'm saying, this is the first time a glorious justice system has been perverted because of Donald fucking Trump and this bullshit he's a billionaire. In some circles, a beloved billionaire. This is a nothing burger of a case. They've got no fucking case. There are people who go to jail every fucking day in this country, who go to prison every fucking day in this country. There are kids up in Pennsylvania who were being sent to fucking kiddie prison by a judge because the kiddie prison was privately run and the judge was getting kickbacks. Our glorious fucking system has now there's going to be cast aspersions on our glorious, perfect judicial system, according to Tucker Carlson last night, because of this. People go to prison and sit on death row for years. Turns out police hid exculpatory evidence, withheld it. He himself, Tucker Carlson himself, did a whole fucking 2-week spiel about the damn videos from 1/6 that were kept, exculpatory evidence that were kept from the fucking defense in order to put a whole bunch of people in fucking jail. And according to Tucker Carlson last night, the one fucking time in the last 150 years that our system has been corrupted was with the arrest of the indictment of Donald J. Trump. I mean, it's just stupid. It's just stupid hyperbole. Let me show you why this guy was once disregarded as unreliable and will be again. That's why Alvin here looks so depressed, because he knows this dude went to fucking school, got a fucking degree, passed the fucking bar, worked his way up, got fucking elected, and was living in Manhattan. The pinnacle of his fucking profession. And he's throwing it all away. Because he's solid. This is an article from the New York Times talking about why, in fact, they decided to dust off this old fucking chestnut. Along the way, a key internal skeptic of the investigation became one of its champions. Mr. Bragg shook up the Trump team and hired an experienced lawyer away from the Justice Department to help lead it. And he ultimately found new promise in a key witness he had once disregarded as unreliable. It says that not once, but several times in this article. Mr. Bragg also developed concerns about relying on Michael D. Cohen, Mr. Trump's former fixer, questioning whether he had enough knowledge about the intricacies of Mr. Trump's financial records to be a pivotal witness. Let's scroll on down here, and I'm going to show you what I mean when it comes to this whole thing is based on this fucking scumbag. The grand jury. For Mr. Bragg, the new year began by impaneling a grand jury to hear evidence in the hush money case. For his prosecutors, it was a peace summit with Mr. Cohen. Mr. Cohen mentioned at the very beginning. At a meeting in the office in Lower Manhattan, the same building where the new grand jury would start to meet, the prosecutors told him they wanted to start fresh, and Mr. Cohen was amenable. I went into 80 Center Street skeptical and guarded, Mr. Cohen said in an interview with the Times, referring to the building where the major economic crimes bureau is. And after a 3-hour initial meeting, I left reassured and confident in the team. They were knowledgeable, articulate, and professional in a way that made me as comfortable as I was with the previous Pomerantz and Duane team. He met with them 8 times. It was the first of at least 7 visits Mr. Cohen made to the office this year. In the ensuing meetings, the prosecutors grilled him about granular aspects of the hush money episode. And he provided them with documents and his phone. While Mr. Cohen talked, the prosecutors began bringing evidence to the grand jury. It's all based on fucking Cohen. The first witness was David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, the tabloid that helped broker Mr. Cohen's payout to Miss Daniels. Mr. Pecker was followed by Mrs. Daniels' lawyer and some of Mr. Trump's employees and campaign aides, and prominently Kellyanne Conway and Hope Hicks. The process culminated in Mr. Cohen testifying before the panel for more than 2 days in March. It started with Cohen, it ended with Cohen. And they were fucking interviewing and they were bringing witnesses in based on Cohen's fucking discussions. It is all about a fucking jailhouse snitch who was once disregarded as unreliable and somebody who didn't have enough information about the subject to prosecute. You talk about going in fucking hamstrung. That's not a one-armed man in a fucking boxing contest. That's a no-armed man in a boxing contest. A no-armed man with only one leg. It's trash. And that's not the only source I have for you there. Let's talk about that. Michael Cohen pleads guilty in Manhattan federal court to 8 counts, including criminal tax evasion and campaign finance violations. Plea follows the filing of 8 counts of criminal information alleging concealment of more than $4 million in unreported income and $280,000 in unlawful campaign contributions. You scroll down here a little bit. This is FBI Assistant Director in Charge William Sweeney. This investigation uncovered crimes of fraud, deception, evasion, conducted through a string of financial transactions that were carefully constructed and concealed to protect a variety of interests, end quote. He is a straight up fucking liar. He is a liar and a manufacturer of facts. He is a liar and a manufacturer of facts who will do anything to avoid prison. This is another article from the New York Times. I will post links to all this down below. Now, as Mr. Cohen prepares to head to prison in 2 weeks, dozens of previously unreported emails, text messages, and other confidential documents reviewed by the New York Times suggest that his falling out with Trump may have been avoidable. Missed cues, clashing egos, veiled threats, and unaddressed money worries all contributed to Mr. Cohen's halting decision to turn on a man he had long idolized and even once vowed to take a bullet for, according to the documents and interviews with people close to the events. Some of the documents have been turned over to the prosecutor in Manhattan, and a small number were mentioned in special counsel's report released on Thursday, which dealt extensively with Mr. Cohen and referred to him more than 800 times. Mr. Cohen had held out hope for a different outcome until the end. Why is that fucking important? Why is that important? He was doing everything he could, that cushy little piece of shit who went on MSNBC, and they let him talk about how no one is above the law, while he was ripping off his own fucking clients, stealing everything that wasn't nailed down, lying incessantly, and trying to concoct ways to hide money from the goddamn IRS. So he could line his pockets. And he's a fucking valued source on MSNBC. Mr. Cohen had held out hope for a different outcome until the very end when he pleaded guilty and confessed to paying the illegal hush money to avert potential sex scandal during the presidential campaign. Just hours earlier, racked with indecision, he was still seeking guidance, looking, as one informal advisor put it, for another way out before he fucking snitched. Before he fabricated. Why exactly do you think this prosecutor didn't want to use him before? He's a fucking liar and a snitch and a coward. Do the crime, do the time. That's the worst thing you can be. That's the worst thing. I saw a video just the other day. Some guy with a bunch of tattoos waving his arms around because he knows that gets the algorithm going on YouTube. Stupid people. And he said, we automatically will attack if somebody puts them in our cell. Child rapists, and snitches. Anything else really, they can live with. Even if it's somebody from rival gangs obviously have their own thing, but even if it's somebody from another fucking race, they don't give a shit about that. They don't care. Arsonist, don't care. Embezzler, don't care. You snitch, you get your ass beat immediately. There's a code to this shit. Says a guy with tattoos and his arms waving around all over the place. Mr. Cohen's anxiety on displaying the documents played a role in the undoing of his relationship with Mr. Trump, as did Mr. Costello's lack of success in serving as a bridge to the White House. But also looming large were Mr. Giuliani's and Mr. Trump's failure to understand the threat that Mr. Cohen posed, and their inability or unwillingness to put his financial and emotional insecurities to rest. This is the New York fucking Times. They didn't pay him. They didn't pull strings for him. So he decided he was going to get some. He was going to get even. He was going to snitch out Trump. He was going to give the prosecutors whatever they wanted. If it would serve his greedy fucking interest. His greedy, lying, manipulating interest. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is the core of this case. And they said I was daft to build a castle in a swamp. But I built it just the same. And so it sank into the swamp. So I built another. And that one sank into the swamp. So I built a third. And that one caught on fire, fell over, and sank into the swamp. And I built a fourth. And that one stood. And that's what you'll get, my boy. The strongest castle in any swamp. Talk about your hollow fucking case. Talk about your weak sauce. A fucking lying, manipulating jailhouse snitch with a personal vendetta against the guy he just indicted and who has to turn himself in on Tuesday. These are the chronicles of Alvin Bragg. This, boys and girls, is how you end a promising career.
give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.